You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast, exposing the struggles and celebrating the successes in the life of coaches who are action takers and creating authentic impact in today's world. Whether you're just starting out, expanding your reach, or exploding your impact, you're in the right place right now. Stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Now, here are your hosts of the Coach's Journey podcast.
What's up, Coaches Nation? It's Dr. Sherry with another episode of the Coach's Journey podcast. You're acting like you're like a boxing coach, going back and forth, Daniel.
I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. Daniel Fernandez, the co-host for today, is back from paternity leave for the last 6 weeks. How does it feel to be? Yes. How does it feel to be back in the seat?
It's weird. It's weird. It's hard. It's a hard transition back, to be honest, but I'm actually excited to work again on the podcast and other things. And it's fun to get back into work. It's not that you're doing work that you like, you're actually excited to get back to work. I have nothing writing it. I've just been trying to figure out how to do it given the baby. So
absolutely. So let this be a reminder to you as you're listening to this. If you don't get excited about what you're doing right now, maybe pause and think about what you're doing and how can you pivot into something that really gives you energy as you do it, because work doesn't feel like work when you're doing something you love.
And sometimes that actually involves shifting and pivoting how you approach your current work. Doesn't mean you have to do something different. It could be do something differently inside your mind or outside of your mind, depending which way you look at it. There's lots of ways to do that, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm actually really excited about our topic today too.
Yes. So our topic today that we're going to jump into are 4 different types of questions that you may not actually have thought about as a coach or be currently using intentionally. So we're going to bring the awareness to these 4 kind of ways that you can create questions, craft questions for your clients that are powerful and shift their thinking. Before we jump into that, we have 2 cool things we want to share with you. The first, we're so excited. We are launching a school community. Now, we've had a Facebook community for almost 5 years, I think, and we have realized there are a lot of challenges with using Facebook. And it appears that Facebook is changing how they're structuring things, and it's even getting harder to be able to maintain engagement, to be able to make sure that our members in our community are actually seeing all the cool stuff that we put into the Facebook group. So to avoid all of that craziness, we are shifting over to school. It is going to be an absolutely curated group of ambitious coaches that are really working hard at building their business or growing their business or scaling their business. So we invite you to check us out in school, Coaching Mastery Community, and we'd love to see you over there.
That's SKOOL. So if
yes.
you want to join us, do we have our link ready?
Yes, it's cmc.coach/school, SKOOL. Yes, there you go. So that's how you can join us. Just for the next few weeks, it is $27 a month to join and get all of the value that we're building out and shifting over and adding to the school community. Super exciting. But the cool part is you get 30 days free. So if you're like, I don't know, join us. Check us out for 30 days as we're kind of getting things rolling. And here's the other thing that we always encourage our membership to do. Pay attention to what we're doing and the platforms we're using and that sort of stuff, because that gives you information about how maybe you want to use these sorts of things for your own coaching. And maybe you want to build a community and you kind of want to get a bird's eye view on how this works. So for so many reasons, it'd be so valuable for you to come over and be part of the community.
Yeah, and that membership is on a early adopters price point right now.
Yes.
$27 membership per month is a really good deal for what we expect the value to be of this. And once our early adopters group fills up, the price is going to go up. So if you ever wanted to be part of Coaching Mastery community or an amazing, vibrant coaching community with really awesome coaches, then now's the time.
Yeah. Love it.
That being said, what's our topic today, Sharon? Or do you have something else to share?
I do have something else. One more thing. We do a monthly masterclass for whoever, whatever coach. You don't even have to be part of our community, but we do a monthly masterclass. It's totally free. We talk about a variety of topics, all the topics that are the most important to growing your business. And this coming month, which is this coming Monday, it is about the sales process for your coaching business. And so we highly encourage you to sign up for that. And if you're watching this later as the podcast, that's okay. We can still give you the replay, but we ask you to sign up for this because this is going to be super, super powerful for you to really think through the customer journey. How are you selling and coaching your clients through the process of committing to what's really best for their life. So join us for that. We would be happy to have you.
And this is a totally free register, join live opportunity if you're listening to this right now live. And if you're a coach and you want to keep coaching, you're going to have to build your business. And if you want to build your business and you're committed to building your business, our community is here for you. And this masterclass will help you figure out some of the secret keys that you may not know or maybe need to dial up a little bit in your coaching business. So
absolutely. So go to school. I thought I was out of school. Yeah, we're never out of school, right? Life we're always learning. And then the masterclass. Feel free to comment below if you're on a platform where you can comment. Otherwise, send us an email at support@coachingmasterycommunity.com. Tell us what you want, and we'll make sure that you get the link and all the good stuff associated with that. So we're going to jump into these 4 types of questions that we can ask as a powerful coach to help our clients shift their perspective, their mindset, their beliefs. And these 4 types of questions are questions you may not have really consciously thought through. So we're going to talk through what they are, how they can look in the coaching so that the next time you're with a client, you can be like, "Ooh, I remember that one. I'm going to try it right here and see what happens."
And our first one, if you haven't heard of this type of question, if you've been coaching a while, you will have heard of this type of question. Our first one, if you have not heard of this type of question, then you may want to really think carefully about your sales process, because this type of question is a really important part of a sales process or of a discovery session for people to commit with you. If you don't know this type of question, it may be really hard to get people to sign up with your coaching. So that's why we're doing it first. I'm really excited for the 4 of them. But the first one, Sherry, tell us what it is.
It is a vision question, or another word for it. And I think Brendan Burchard uses this term, and it's the future-based question. So the way this could look is you've got a client, you're talking about their stuck point, the things that they're frustrated with, especially in that sales call. And you ask them a well-placed question. What would it be like, let's say 3 years down the road, if this problem didn't exist anymore? And it gets them to kind of think about, like it's possible, gets them out of that stuck downward spiral thinking. At least that's one of the values of this type of question.
Yeah. And this reminds me, like when I'm doing my initial discovery sessions with clients, sometimes I begin with the future-based question. And I like, there's lots of types of I think the word actually is future pacing that you were looking for, Sherry.
Yes, you're right. Future pacing.
Future pacing. What you're doing is you're pacing their mind into the future. And so if you can get them to envision the future state of their life or of their business or whatever it is you're coaching them through, or their relationship, whatever it is, if they know what their future vision is clearly and explicitly, then they can start to make progress towards it. It's really hard to progress towards a fuzzy target. And so that's one of the reasons why in my coaching, I like to start the discovery session knowing what that is. Sometimes the discovery session goes a little differently, but usually my first big question to them is something along the lines of, what does it look like in the future? And there's a few different ways to do this question. One of my big insights in coaching early on was when I discovered the Dan Sullivan question, which was, there's so many pieces of this, and there's a little book I have written on this. So if you want to buy the book, it's the Dan Sullivan question. That's what it's called, because he came up with this question, which is really good, which is, it's a future pacing question. Let me see if I can remember it. If you and I were having a conversation a year from now, what would happen? What would have to have happened in the meantime for you to be happy with your progress, for you to be ecstatic with your progress, or excited about your progress, I like to say. Yeah. And the point of that question is a future-paced question that also relates to the coaching process. So that's like one of my favorite future-pacing questions, is the Dan Sullivan question, because it's like it has the client envision you as part of that journey, because you can help them get there. It helps them identify what would be needed for them to get to where they want to go. And it says, like, we're going to be doing this together. We're going to get you there. And we're going to be talking about how awesome it was in a year. And now you're getting clear on what it is that you need to have happen along the way. And that gives me a map of where they need to get to and how we're going to get there a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And so as you were talking, Daniel, I noticed, or I remembered, so yesterday I had a conversation with a coach. However, I was on the coachee side of the coaching conversation. So one of my kids
You're the
is,
client. You're the client in this situation.
no, well, not technically. Yes and no. So my daughter has been meeting with a coach that we've been paying for as parents. And so we were having a conversation. Yeah. So we were having a conversation and she asked, so my husband and I were on the call and it was interesting. So she asked, what do you want for her life? Like, what do you see her life being like in, when she gets to be an adult? And I'm like, as she asked me that question, I remember thinking like, I remember thinking, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. Like she was trying to assess like if my husband and I had very specific and concrete expectations of where she needs to go in life, which is a perfectly appropriate and great question of parents. And I gave her the right answer, which was for her to be her best self, it was a version.
But you actually believe that. It's not just the right answer.
You're right. I
you
totally
actually want that for her.
Yes. It was a much more robust answer than that. But yeah, so she used that question on me and my husband as parents, which is perfect because it really is important to understand what are the expectations. A lot of times we don't consciously think about what we want in our life in the future, but our behaviors and actions are playing out what our beliefs are. And so I think it's really helpful as a coach when I ask that question. It helps me give me information that I can then use and feed back to the client to challenge them later when their behavior is not in alignment with what they said their vision is. So there's so many reasons that this is such a good question.
I love that story, Sherry. The thing I love about future questions is, like you said, it helps us like know which way to go. It's like I call future questions kind of like lighthouses. Or it's like the river. If you're like lost in the forest, you need to figure out where's the river and you need to go that way. Right.
Yeah.
And so like these directional pointers for us is really important. One of the reasons coaching is important for most people is that it keeps them focused on the things that they say they want, right? We can all say we want things and then we don't have the focus to stay there consistently week after week or month after month. And that's where a coach really helps. It's not the only way, of course, but it's one of the ways. And one of the things I like to do in my coaching, once I have a client sign up, is something called the ultimate scenario, which I learned from Evan Pagan a long time ago. It's also just, you can just craft a life vision together. But what is the ultimate scenario? What is the outcome? What is the end goal? And that's where that Dan Sullivan question comes in. That's where like, what would your life look like in a year if you could wave a magic wand? That's another great question I learned from Christian Michelson. There's so many ways to start establishing a vision of the future with the client, even after they've passed the discovery session and they're in your program. You do need to still get clarity on what it is that you're trying to build. I usually spend the first little bit of the coaching program getting really clear on that, so that every session I know, are we actually moving towards that or not? Right. And if we're not, it's like, that's not that important. Let me switch directions and say like, hey, you said you wanted this. This is not really that important to you, unless there's some reason today that I don't know. Like maybe we go in this direction today. So I can
absolutely
redirect the client with the answers to the future pacing questions.
And then there's the big overarching, how do you want your life to be in the future? But then also every single session, when you're talking about a very subset of the bigger coaching journey, you can ask this question. So let me, refer back to my daughter. She could ask, how do you want your relationship to look like on a daily basis with your daughter in a year? Like that would be a great question to go from a big picture to like something super concrete. Or maybe we're working on building trust in the relationship. So how exactly would you want trust to show up in your relationship with your husband if it was a marital relationship? And so like we can get super granular with this, and I just, so we can use it in so many different levels.
Oh yeah, the granularity of the future pacing types of questions are really important. And I want to say your daughter is so fortunate that you have committed to giving her a coach. Like, if she ever listens to this, like she should hopefully appreciate how great that is. Like, how many parents help their kids get coaches? Almost none. So, I mean, it wasn't even a thing 30 years ago.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. She would be going to a therapist, which
that's a whole nother topic for another question, right?
yeah, I'm like, we're not going to go there.
Yeah. But the granularity of outcome questions, of future pacing questions, also comes down to outcomes. Something that happened in a coaching session that I had, was it Friday? We were talking about a very specific situation, and it was a relationship between husband and wife. And my client was talking about like the dynamics, or the situation that happened. And one of the questions I asked him, like, in this particular situation, what is the outcome that you want? And that's one of my favorite future questions. Like, what's the outcome? Because a lot of the time, even with me and my wife, we're trying to figure something out. We haven't said what our goal is. What is the outcome? We need to future pace ourselves so that we're aligned. Sometimes we go like, what are we optimizing for here? And we each say different things, you know? So those are all future pacing questions. Like, what is the outcome? What's the goal?
Yeah.
What are we optimizing for? Where are we trying to get to? And what that does is it also gets people's lack of clarity out into the open, and then forces more clarity on where we're heading.
Absolutely.
Or even for that, like the thing that's happening later today, I'm delivering a workshop. What's the outcome?
Yeah.
What do you want to achieve? Like, what's the goal? Instead of like, let's just build it.
And that ties very nicely into the second question, particularly your example around you and your wife kind of optimizing for different things. The second type of question is a question that is values focused. So with that optimizing for different things, you and your wife are trying to work collaboratively to achieve a goal, but you haven't maybe expressed that a lot. And so you might have different values that you are right, that you're acting out of that are a little bit different. Now, the way that I often see this when I'm working with real estate investing clients is one person values cash flow. So like they want money now, printing from their properties. And the other person's like, I don't care about cash flow. I'm looking at retirement. Like I want equity. I want the money to just accumulate on the back end. So that's kind of an example of neither one is right or wrong, but there's two different values that people are making their decisions out of. So as a coach, bringing these to the forefront of like, what is the major value that's driving this decision? Or is this decision or is this belief in alignment with this value that we talked about last month that I know is so critically important to you?
Yeah. I love everything you're saying. I love that you started with a non-moral value. Like,
Yeah.
values-based does not mean like what is it that makes you a good person only. There's lots of kinds of like, what do you value? What's important to you? So like the vision-based questions are slightly different because they're like, where are you trying to get to?
Mm-hmm.
Values-based questions might be like, why does that matter to you?
Yeah.
Like, what's important about that destination? What do you value? Another values-based question could be like, who do you want to be? Like, how do you want to show up? What are your values? And are we in alignment with those values? One of the things that, to take that a little bit farther, one of the things I like to ask people about is when there's conflicting values. Because like the hardest decisions and the hardest situations are where you have two different things that you care about. Oh, I care about both cash flow and appreciation. Well, you're going to have to make a choice, right? Like which, and so one of the questions I like to ask about, what is the most important in this particular situation? What is most important to prioritize as the top value, right? Because like you may have a matrix of 6 different things that matter to you, and you may need to create a spreadsheet. Like this matters this much, this matters that much, or you may need
Why
to
am I
decide.
not surprised you said to create a spreadsheet,
You may,
Daniel?
what I was gonna say is more often you usually decide what is the most critical one. What is the one that matters the most? It's not
Yes.
always true. Sometimes you need to balance them all, and sometimes there's only 2 or 3 things that you need to think about, and you have to come up with a balanced approach. But a lot of the time, it's actually no. This thing doesn't matter as much as this thing. I'm gonna base it on that. Like if I'm talking about how I'm going to interact with somebody, well, what matters the most is this. I want to make sure they leave this conversation feeling good in the relationship, and the outcome of them paying me the money back is not as important in this interaction. That is an
Absolutely.
outcome. But so now I know how I'm going to direct the conversation based on my top value in this situation. Right now, I do want the money back, but I want to build that relationship and make sure that I'm more likely to get the money back, perhaps, but also that I show up as my best in how I respect people, even people who owe me money. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One of the one exercise that I do with a lot of clients is is a value. It's called a value sort, but basically they take a big long list of values and I get them to whittle it down to like 3 to 5 at the most that are the most important to them. And a lot of times, inevitably, there's at least one that they're like, I didn't really realize it was that important. Or when you do this with a couple, like I can't remember how long ago it was that I discovered this, but when I did, the light bulb went off in my mind. I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. And it was my husband. One of my husband's primary values is entertainment. Now, it doesn't mean that he's being entertained. He wants to be the entertainer. And I didn't realize that that is literally one of his top values, that he thrives and loves being able to entertain. So whether it's him singing, being in a band, playing music, telling jokes, whatever it is, teaching, like it doesn't matter. Like he is here to entertain people. And so since that, I realized that value, which is absolutely not a value of mine, or it's not how I frame what I do. Like what I'm doing right now, it's not about entertainment, it's about education. So my frame is education. His frame is entertainment. And so by recognizing that, that's a game changer in kind of in how we're negotiating, how we do things and why, and where we spend our money and time and things like that. So
Wow.
yeah, it's huge. So as the kind of the recipient of an awareness around values, it's awesome. So the more that we can help our clients become aware of their values and really dial those in and be much more conscious of it and intentional, I mean, that's a huge gift we can give them as their coach.
And you can do that through asking them questions. You can also do it through sharing what you just shared as an example, Sherry, because what you just told me, I just realized in myself that I have both those values, entertainment and education. And if I think about like performing music, I'm actually trying to accomplish both at the same time, which is really fascinating. So like the word edutainment came to mind, but it doesn't really quite fit exactly what I'm talking about. but like, yeah, there's a value in me for both of those sides of the coin. I never thought about it in those terms as much. So that's another way to reflect on values, is to share about your values. And you can ask the client, what about you? Right.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, it's really important that you don't project those things on the client so that they can tell you. But if they're confused, they're not sure how to answer those questions, you can give them some examples, whether it's from real life, things you've noticed about them. I love sharing things about the client and ask, is that true? That's another, is that true for you? Or did I misread it? But values, there's another like angle on values too, which is sometimes in a session I will hear somebody struggling with a decision or a situation, and we'll go back to their best self, and like, how would what would your best be in this situation? How would you show up? And coming up with the adjectives. This is actually also a Brendan Burchard thing that we do to get clarity. You come up with words about yourself. This is kind of a values thing, but it's also like, I would say it's more of a virtues thing. Like, what's the adjective that you use to describe yourself? And then once you ask them how they would describe themselves, now that's a word that they can remember and use. It could be a phrase. There's lots of like little hooks and phrases that you can introduce to clients that you can ask them. I like to ask them to come up with it so that we can then use it later. But asking them about those things for themselves, like, how would you describe yourself as at your best in this situation? What would your best show up as? What's the word? What's the adjective? That's another way to ask about sort of values-based questions here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's shift into question type 3. And I love this one because I notice that a lot of times clients and me can get stuck in negative thinking. We get stuck in, this is the way that it is. And it's hard for us to get out of that.
We're human, yes.
Yeah, right. So the anxiety, the fear, all of these sorts of things show up often. And a question of, well, what would it be like if that weren't true? And just really get them to think about it. So that is what we label the paradoxical question. Like, what if the opposite were actually true? And continue, and it takes a bit for some people to shake loose from their like rigid perspective that this is the way it is. Well, what wasn't actually like that? And you can use this in almost any scenario with almost any concern, and maybe the opposite is completely ridiculous. Like, well, a fear of heights. what if gravity wasn't a thing? Like sometimes it can just be silly. Doesn't have to be like, this big, profound, but getting them to realize that the just asking them that question and kind of pondering something different can help shake up a little bit of shake up their mind, their rigid thinking, and help them kind of get a little bit more creative in the way they're using their brain.
Yeah, I would distinguish. This is really cool because I would never thought about the gravity question. What if gravity wasn't a thing? That's a really great. Like it's a confuse. It's intended to confuse the brain's pattern,
Yes.
right? Which I love that question. So I like that as a that sounds like a paradoxical question to me, or maybe even like a fantasy question. But I like the word paradoxical for that. But the other one you mentioned, I would actually maybe call that more of an opposites question.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not necessarily a paradox to say what if that wasn't true. It's just a hypothetical,
Mm-hmm.
opposites. So like paradox can cover a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like paradoxes for me, paradoxical questions could include both, like questions that are like totally like not like the answer is like the gravity questions, like, well, no, it is a thing, but let's talk about it as though it wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also like use the opposite to trigger a thought that is going to be helpful in this situation, right? Like if you're struggling with a relationship, you can actually say like, well, what if you let's say what if your relationship was even worse, or what if your relationship was really good? It's like not the question that they're expecting. That's like an opposites question. Like
Mm.
pick a scenario that's different than the one you have and ask about that scenario, and that will lead to insights about the current one. But there's another version of this question that I'm trying to formulate in my mind what it is like.
So if you want to think about it, let me share an
Go ahead.
example of what I've used, how I view this or how I apply this to the idea of imposter syndrome. And I do that. This comes up a lot. I work with a lot of people in real estate, and when they first jump into real estate investing, or they're an agent or a broker, there's often, especially an agent, they're new, and so there's like this, everybody is better than me, and everybody knows more, and so there's always this level of imposter syndrome that appears to be present. And so the paradoxical question, or the frame that I introduce is, well, what if the presence of that feeling that you are inadequate in the situation is actually a good thing and is the exact reason? Like, can we interpret it in that it's actually a helpful and positive thing in the moment rather than a negative thing? And so the reason I see it as paradoxical, because it's like trying to flip the negative feeling is actually a sign that they're doing the right thing. So there's a paradox
Yes.
there.
Yes. I love
Yeah.
that.
So
And it's actually along the lines of what I was thinking, because it's like, how do you take the weakness and not see it as a weakness? To me, that's like
mhm,
the version of the question I was looking for. Like, I'm really bad at this. Well, how does that actually help you?
mhm,
Like that's kind of a paradox. Maybe being bad at something actually helps you get better. Or there's lots of ways. Like how is that actually a strength? Because every
yeah,
weakness has an opposite, right?
yeah,
As a flip side of the coin, or bringing up something that like what like if you want something, maybe there's a price to pay for it too. Like
yeah,
it's a paradox to say like this is not it's all not all exactly what you think it is. In a way, the word paradox isn't the perfect word to describe these, but I like it.
yeah, yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add to the paradoxical?
I don't think so. I think I want to get to the fourth one, because we have vision and future based questions, future pacing. We have values focused, and we have paradoxical questions, and then we have category 4, which is meta questions. Let's talk about meta questions, Sherry. Go ahead.
All right. And we're not talking about questions about Facebook.
Oh my gosh, not meta.
Okay, and I love this. One of the things that I learned a lot about through my training as a psychologist is about metacognitions. And that is where we're thinking about our thinking. And I literally had hosted or facilitated a group session yesterday for a group of real estate agents. And I was talking about metacognition, about like thinking about your thinking. And some of them were like, I could just see on their face, they're like, what? I was like, it's a skill, which I totally believe being able to think about our thinking is a skill that we can get better at. So this is about how do we question our questions? And we often Well, the way that I look at it is we have this constant stream of thoughts that go through our mind. And if we can help ask questions rather than like make a statement about situations, that leaves room for there to be an alternative perspective. And so then the next level is, well, how can we ask better questions about the questions that we're asking ourselves? So, and I know Daniel just absolutely loves these like very heady types of thoughts and questions. So I'm going to pass this off to you to share your thoughts.
It's not that I love the heady questions. It's that I love the being able to get meta with somebody, because it means you're taking a different level of thought. It adds depth. Like if somebody asks me a question in the session, a great way to go meta on that would be, what can you tell me about why you're at, like how that question came to you? Or can you tell me the question behind the question?
Mm-hmm.
Or let's talk about like the thought process that led to that question. You're really taking the meta of, like not the conversation we're having, we're talking about the conversation we're having. And then there's a separate conversation we're now having up here. You could also talk about that conversation up here, but let's not get too meta. This is not Inception. You know? But like bringing awareness to our thoughts and bringing awareness to our thinking process and our questions,
Yeah.
and even the questions that we just are thinking about why we're asking those questions, how we came to those questions, the process of questioning sometimes can be helpful. It's not true in every situation that you need to do that, but there are some times where maybe the questions are going in the wrong direction for this client.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're stuck in that direction, it might be time to come up with a meta question. Like, you have asked these 3 questions. What's leading to these questions? That's being a little meta with them, right? You can get more meta than that, but that's kind of an example that I would give. Sherry,
Yeah.
would you kind of agree with the description I'm giving here, or do you have a little more?
Absolutely. And as you were talking, again, I was thinking about an interaction I had with one of my other kids yesterday. And I was asking her some questions about, okay, so I was being a little coachy with her, I was asking her questions like, yeah, I was like, so where do you see I literally was asking her a future pacing question. I was like, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? Like, I'm asking this a teenager, and the response was like, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I didn't figure it. So yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, what are some options? I was just asking her, trying to get her to share a little bit more about her, what she loves and that sort of thing. And she just didn't, she refused. She's like, I don't want to tell you. Like, what? Like, I was taken aback because like she likes to talk. And I'm like, why is she not wanting to share with me? And I would probably classify this as a meta question. I did not deliver it well, and it did not go well.
I love your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And so I was sitting there and I was a little taken aback. I'm like thinking to myself, why isn't she wanting to share? I'm a wonderful mother. Like, I'm open. Anyway, of course
The answer is she's a teenager, but okay.
Exactly. And so I asked her a couple of questions of like, well, so then it wasn't just about, well, tell me, I would love to hear what you would like to do with your life, basically. It was like, well, why don't you want to share it with me? Like,
I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, I was like, are you afraid I won't like what you have to say? Like, I'm asking her these. So now I'm like trying to shift into the meta. Did not get any answers. So I ended up going back to her a couple hours later. And I'm like, hey, so that question I asked you, and then she told me, like, I just needed to wait. But anyway, so I just wanted to use that as an example of kind of like
I would call that a meta question.
Switching gears to not just asking the question, but then taking a step back and asking a question about like the whole interaction.
Yeah, that was meta to your question, actually.
Yeah.
It was like meta for her about your question.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. So our 4 different types of questions: vision and future pacing questions, values focused questions, paradoxical questions, and meta questions.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. This is such a great conversation, Sherry. I really enjoyed exploring this with you.
Yeah, these are always so fun. And we hope that you are getting as much value out of it as we are as the host and co-host. But you know what? If nobody else gets value out of it, I don't know. I have fun. I think this is great.
Yeah, no, people should definitely get value out of this. Something we said will have resonated with somebody. If anything resonated with you, put it in the comments. If you're watching this, where somewhere you can post or comment, we'd love to hear from you.
We would love to hear from you.
With you
And share And share this podcast with another coach friend of yours so that they can also kind of get hooked in and be able to gain value and be able to grow themselves as well. Our purpose and our mission with the podcast is to help coaches grow in their coaching and their business mastery. So there's always topics around how do we grow, how do we get better, how do we refine our processes.
Yeah.
And just a reminder, cmc.coach/ or / whichever one, school / school.
cmc.coach/school.
There we go.
SKOOL.
Yes. So there we go. We'd love to see you over there. And if you would like support in developing a more refined and effective sales strategy, then join our masterclass or get the replay and just send us a message or hashtag. Get a hold of us. We're all over the place on the internet. coachingmasterycommunity.com.
Go to the internets. Send us things on the internet.
I was going to say on the dark webs. No dark webs.
We on the very light webs, the very bright webs.
Yes, we are.
We're
all right.
Thank you. To the world.
Thank you so much for your time and energy, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right.
Bye.
You're listening to the Coach's Journey podcast.